All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I know it was right after lunch, so please do not sleep through the session. You can sleep through your next session. So I have a quick, before I start, I have a quick poll for the audience. Who's ready for Def Leppard? Who's going to Def Leppard? Who's not going to Def Leppard? Oh, how could you do that? And that's right in our wheelhouse, right? Balding 40-year-old males, Def Leppard, and that's just awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming, guys. My name is Ryan Wunsch. I am the technical director for our network security business. I handle our vision, our strategy, our field enablement for all of our engineers worldwide. And I have with me presenting today is Brian Lechner. He is our PM for our firewall, enterprise firewall technologies, as well as our endpoint integrity agent technologies, which we're going to talk a lot about today, and how we're leveraging those technologies to give us what we call visibility into our security technologies. So I'll dive right in. We're going to take you through Layer 7 visibility. We hear a lot about application visibility, and Palo Alto did a great job in bringing the term application visibility and application firewall, right, to the forefront of, right, our thoughts, right? Did a great job with marketing. But what we don't understand, and what the normal user doesn't understand, is it's not really application visibility. It's server-side service, okay? We're trying to determine at a network layer, right, an unknown client, an unknown application, an unknown service, and an unknown process is connecting out to a service in the cloud. Whether it's Facebook, right, it's a SQL server in the cloud, whether it's MySpace, whatever it is that we're connecting to. Well, that's an inherent flaw in security. And if you listen to Mike Fay's keynote speech today, we need to have visibility into the endpoint. We need to see what's going on at the actual device making the outbound request. This gives us true application visibility, not server-side service visibility. And we want to bring both of those together. Now, when you look at what we've done with our NSP platform, and I'm going to focus in on the network security platform quite a bit. And I'm going to do that because it shows where McAfee is going with the strategy. When you look at the IPS platform 5 years ago, we had a name for it called IntraShield. And we began to see that the next generation technology market was coming. And we needed to not have a standalone point product on the network that had limited visibility. It only what happens to pass it on the network. We needed to build what we call an extensible platform. We needed to have the ability to have visibility down to the endpoint. We needed to begin to bring in network-based forensics. We needed to have integration in with the McAfee Security Connected. We need to understand what's going on in through EPO. We even want to see what's going on through vulnerability and risk assessments, right? And now we've tied all that together with advanced threat defense to bring in a very strong, not only advanced malware, but an advanced persistent threat, right? Technology and engines as well. So when you look at the platform, as we begin to evolve this, it brings together the messaging of Security Connected that we have spent so many years talking about. And when we talk about the security platform or the network security platform, it gives us that base to have what I call extensible security. I no longer have to rely on a single network device to be able to see at line speed everything it needs to know to make a decision. I can begin to have other extensible technologies as well as forensics, flow analysis, right, and endpoints actually providing real-time information to our network technologies so that we can make intelligent decisions based on what's going on. All right, so why should you be on your networks, right? What is the biggest problem? What is our biggest problem today? When we defined changing the network security platform to an actual platform, we had two primary goals, all right? Number one is visibility. The next one is control. Detections and scalability are part of the inherent solution, but as we began to look at what we wanted to have the most, visibility and control. If I can't see the threat, I don't have visibility into the endpoint, I can't control the extraction of data. And I can't have control until I have visibility, right? Our primary focus. All right, so what is EIA? So for this, I'm going to turn it over to Brian and let him give you a deep dive into our endpoint intelligence agent, and then I'll come back up at the end and actually show you a quick demo right, and show you what it really looks like in a live environment, right, based on the technology that we show you today.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. I get this question a lot. What is Endpoint Intelligence Agent? And the thing I always have to start with is it's the agent that isn't really an agent. It's almost just a plugin. It's a network shim. But what it does, and yes, it still has the A on the end of it. That'll go away because how many of you are endpoint management people? Use EPO. Who wants to put another agent on their firewall or on their clients? You know, yeah, I got one guy shaking. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, nobody wants another agent. And the answer is this isn't really an agent. It's just that when we created it, calling it the Endpoint Intelligence plugin didn't really make sense. Yeah, it's using the technology that's already in the McAfee agent itself. So Endpoint Intelligence Agent, or EIA, soon to be renamed into just EI because EIA sounds like we're trying to get the entire alphabet in there, and then everybody calls it EIEIO, which apparently isn't really its name, but that's how almost everybody actually refers to it. It's a process that's there to monitor your network traffic. Anything that's going to go out onto the network, we take a copy of that and hold on to it for just a very short period of time before we send it out. During that time, as I'll show you in a couple of other slides then, we actually send some data to another device so that you can make an informed security decision off of it. It is installed and managed entirely through EPO. It really is just, oh, hey, cool, I want to use this. Click, push it out, and it's done. It's just another plugin as far as you're concerned. It's very, very, very low overhead. And when I say very, very, very low overhead, we're actually looking on ways to make it even smaller because as the move toward virtualization kicks up, everybody says, how do I get more? And the answer is, you get more by us making it more efficient. It also now, beginning at version 2.3, provides data back to your EPO server. Previous to 2.3, everything that it did would only talk to a network device, only to your NSP or your firewall engines. We said, you know what, that's part of the problem. You know, we're not communicating security connected then. Yes, we have something, but the network guys then have to talk to the endpoint guys, and everybody knows, as somebody joked this morning, their wives may play bridge together, but these two guys have never met. And that's not meant to be sexist, that's just, you know, the reality. The network guys and the endpoint guys, we typically don't talk that often. So in order for this to be effective, there's got to be something for the EPO management system to be interested in it as well. Otherwise, it's just doing something for somebody else that you think is going to add more overhead to you. Right now, we do provide real-time connection data, and this is actual real-time. Like before the packet leaves your client, the endpoint has already told the network device. Right now, we support that on Firewall Enterprise, NSP, specifically on the Network Threat Behavior Analyzer, NTBA system. And in the not too very distant future, we'll also be supporting it on our next generation firewall, as was illustrated during Mike Fay's talk today. Let's go back, what, 5 years? Let's go back 5 years. For most of us, this was your network visibility. You had port 80. Well, that was probably web traffic. You had port 25. Yeah, that was probably SMTP. With most firewalls, most security devices, that's all you got. Okay, you know, port 80, hopefully that's web traffic. You take that next point, and this is the part that Ryan was alluding to that Palo Alto did really well. They gave us application visibility, but they only give us the server-side application visibility. Now we know that that web traffic isn't just web, that it's Google Hangouts, that you're using Box, that you're using some Oracle system over port 80 or 443. You see more visibility into that now. That was a great first step. The problem is, what do you do at that next level? How do you secure layer 8? Who's seen the t-shirts, you know, securing layer 8 over the years? Yeah? No? Yeah. Okay, a couple of people are saying, yeah, we're not here to secure layer 8. The bottom line is, nobody can secure layer 8 except for better user information. Better informed users. Who wants one? Who doesn't want one? Yeah, okay. So this gave us a great first step. But let's take it to that next step, that next level. And that's where we get beyond layer 7 visibility. I don't just know that my web traffic is Google Hangouts now. I actually know that it's Google, but it's being used by Internet Explorer. I know that that's a really legitimate piece of traffic now. You can argue that Internet Explorer may or may not be as legitimate as you'd like it to be, but it's a web browser. Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, whatever the case may be, you are using something, and it is using the appropriate ports. You're using Outlook, and Outlook is now using Exchange email. It's sending port 25 communications or pop mail or whatever it is, but you know that it's a program that should be doing these things. When you see something suddenly turn up on your port 80 traffic with a name like bot.exe, does that sound like a legitimate application that might be wanting to use web traffic? Well, I guess it depends on your definition of legitimate. If you're a hacker, then yeah, that's probably definitely something legitimate. If you're an enterprise consultant, that might draw a little bit of a red flag up. But with this visibility, you need to be able to execute on it. As I said before the client actually releases the packet, and in this case we're going to show it going to NSP, we're going to send an extra frame. It's a single encrypted packet from the client to the NSP, and it's going to include a lot of information in it to be able to identify what that process is. It's going to give me my source IP address, my destination IP address, my source and destination ports. It's going to give me my user information, but it's most importantly going to give me the application that is being used to make this system query. If we look through our network perspective, we get to see that Alice is using Oracle, Salesforce, and Twitter. That's what you get to see today using a traditional layer 7 next generation device. With endpoint intelligence now, we get to see that host side process. What is it from the host side that's actually going through? Well, for Alice, Hyperion, okay, it's a little outdated, but it's still a legitimate service to be accessing my Oracle database. Is that an anomaly then? No, that makes sense. Salesforce, she's using Firefox. She's using TweetDeck to reach Twitter. Okay, maybe not the most business savvy, but we'll let it go through. It's a legitimate application. Bob's using Skype. Skype, as anyone knows, is a wonderful protocol to try to figure out because Skype said, oh yeah, all those network security standards, we're not going to do any of that stuff. We're going to act as much like a virus as possible so we can get out through anything so that anyone can use Skype from anywhere. Who's found that on their network yet? Yeah, a couple of you. How many of you love Skype? Yeah. Okay, how many of you just flipped me the bird? Okay. At least I got a couple of you honest. Oracle, PuTTY, again, you get to see legitimate applications that are using the legitimate network service traffic. When we take a look at Carol, though, Carol's using Safari. She's just surfing a bunch of generic websites, HTTP, HTTPS, nothing special there. Her IMAP client, she's using Thunderbird. Again, not a problem there. But why is Outlook suddenly trying to use Oracle? Outlook, as far as I know, is a mail client. Why is it trying to access a web resource like my Oracle database? That seems like an anomaly. That's something that NSP then will trigger on and say, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is something you need to take action on. This is something then that hopefully, both at the endpoint side and on the network side, you can look into now, and we know to start looking into what's wrong with Carol's system. What is it that's called Outlook on her system that's suddenly trying to do things? And by the way, if anybody thinks that malware named Outlook.exe seems odd, you're wrong. That's one of the easiest things to try to do when you're doing targeted malware, is you hide it in so that when somebody comes through and looks at your task manager, hey, Outlook, oh, that's a legitimate email application. That should be there. Well, if you didn't know that she was using Thunderbird for her email, you'd kind of already be at a little bit of a loss there. So I mentioned before at version 2.3, we introduced the ability to start including that information for EPO users as well. I'm showing some of the pre-release dashboards for 2.4. That'll be out later this quarter. The reason why I'm showing that isn't so much that it's that much cooler. It's just that we're starting to change some of the things. The other thing I need to pre-warn you about, you don't normally have just a single big block like this for half of this application. That was something that I did a because I was doing it in a lab environment. Has anybody been through the Innovation Fair yet? Some of you may have seen a much more robust version of this being demonstrated in real time there. They're using the endpoint intelligence to show a little bit of the information about the cloud classifications. But with your EPO dashboard, you come in, you get 4 quadrants initially. The top half, that's going to give you what have you seen, what is there. It's been there before, it's been there now, everything's fine. The bottom half is things that are new. You can adjust the time. And this is one of the things that, unfortunately, in the 2.3 release didn't get done correctly. When you set the time in 2.3, it changes all 4 quadrants. In 2.4, then, we fixed that so you can change times accordingly. But with this, I can see, for example, on the left half, what are all of my executables, all of my applications. And on my right half, I get to see what is specifically targeted as being malware. What is something that doesn't belong in my network? When you look at this, though, one of the first things that you see is you've got a lot of data points floating around. When you want to actually start looking into that, you have to click on something to be able to move into the next stage and start drilling in. From the first level, you can drill into the list of all your applications. With all of your applications, in this case, we've clearly defined malware. Hopefully no one's colorblind. I apologize if you are. Malware is in red. Everything low risk is in green because the intent of that was red light, green light. You want to stop the malware. This next column is a recording state. When the recording state is set to yes, then it reports. You'll see it actually in your presentation in the dashboard. If it's set to no, for example, servicehost.exe, that's an application that you know is going to be prevalent because every Windows service uses it. Every time your client makes a DNS request, it has to go through servicehost.exe. You don't need to see that one bar that blows out the scale for everything else because all of your clients use that. You move on to the executable name and the version. This is information that can be usable to you in some cases. For example, if I had an application called Outlook.exe and the version was 25.0, does that make sense? I'll admit, from a network guy standpoint, I don't know what the current Outlook version is. But from an endpoint stand, I know that the current shipping version of Outlook is 15. So how can this version report at 25? That's another thing that you can use to help trigger those types of events. With EPO, we give you a summary and the number of counts so that you can see how often an event has occurred. Again, as we've been beating into you hopefully through the conference, the prevalence of an event helps draw attention to it. The last piece, of course, is a hash. If you happen to be using our Global Threat Intelligence, GTI system, to be able to pull information down, or if you're using Threat Intelligence Exchange and TIE, you can use that to look up that hash very quickly and find out if this is or is not a trusted executable. I'm going to drill a little bit deeper into this. And this WeDownloadManager.exe, I clicked on it from the previous screen. I get to see that the risk came back, and it is associated with being malware. Well, it kind of acted a lot like malware. We determined that it was, in fact, malware. It's actually an internal piece of something that we wrote that was intended to act like malware, but not actually destroy my box, because that would have been bad. We get our hash value, the version. Same stuff from the previous screen. Where this now comes in and gives us some forensic data that's of extreme use is my first and last seen-on dates. The first seen-on tells me the first time that it was reported up to me. The last seen-on tells me the last time I saw it. This is EPO's receipt, not the client itself. Remember, the clients, because we didn't want to add a lot of overhead to your EPO servers, the clients only feed data up to you once an hour. So it's going to give you a summary once an hour and say, these are the executables that I'm doing. Go ahead and include that in your tables. With this, though, if I've initially seen a program and I've taken action and I don't have TIE, so I have to manually go through and remediate all of my hosts. If I then think that I'm clear and I check back 2 days later and I still have a last seen on since my 2 days ago, I know that I missed something. I can dig into that further. One of the things I can do is start looking into my top reported endpoints. In this case, it was a single endpoint. I built this in a lab. I tested it. Bear in mind, I only ran this application one time. and it had 24 network connections it attempted to make. That's something that you need to be aware of too. Just because you click on it one time doesn't mean it gives up. This particular application tried to go to 24 different sites. The first one was blocked. It kept trying. In a traditional network, that's just a failed network attempt. Things happen. Your NSP, though, would have drawn attention to this. It would have said, hey, wait a minute, this is malware trying to go out. And then it would know that those 24 destination addresses are something to be flagged for further analysis as well. That lets you know where they're trying to go so that you can say, wait a minute, I have other connections that are going there legitimately. Is this something that I want to trust this site with? I mentioned before, endpoint and network people, we don't always talk. We try to talk, but usually we're getting blamed by end users a little bit more than either one of us cares to. And so the question comes up of who takes the responsibility for protecting us. Is it the endpoint persons who has to report and protect the endpoint? Is it the network who has to protect just the network? But what about us working together? The idea of us actually working together is something that right now is a little bit new to most of us. Now, I recognize some industries and some companies, the endpoint and the network teams, they work together, not a problem. I mentioned something about this with my fiance one time, and she actually said, wait, who's the endpoint team? She knew who her network team was, but she had no idea what her endpoint team was. If that's an organization, you need to be prepared for that. Who's going to take responsibility? The idea behind this right now is to give everyone the same information to start taking action on. I don't want to hammer you with everything. If I gave you every application on every Windows version that you have in your network, you'd get slaughtered. There's just too much data to look at. What's the legitimate data? What's the illegitimate data? Most of you have heard of something called the gold image. The golden image is your IT staff has built their basic application. They've set up the computer the way they wanted it to. They've installed their McAfee antivirus client on it and run the security scan to make sure everything's there and it's all fully patched. And then they start imaging it going out. With Endpoint Intelligence, we have the ability to take a baseline snapshot that you can then load into your EPO dashboard, and then you can go through and change things. For example, when I imported everything initially, and I set the record values to no. I didn't want to care what was there. This is from a baseline, fresh install Windows 8.1 professional system. I don't know what 2/3 of the applications on this program are, but I went through and I said, okay, let's take a few of these and let's start taking a look at them. I installed Firefox after my gold image. Well, by default then, that's set to yes. Record this, report on it. Once I go through as an administrator for EPO at my endpoint side and say, what, Firefox, that's fine, we trust Firefox. I can change that to be don't report on it. It helps anomalies jump out at you extremely fast though. If you went back to the previous slide that I started with in that dashboard and I'd filtered out all of my gold image information, I wouldn't have even needed necessarily to have that other side with the malware popping up, because it would have shown up as being one of 3 applications that wasn't part of my base image. I would have known very quickly, this is something I don't want on my network or that I need to look into faster. Customize your dashboard. You get a lot more value out of these things very quickly. Baselining. Who was paying attention when Renee James talked about baselining yesterday? Anybody? That's the hardest part that we're faced with right now. Windows includes 1 million applications, and then they patch them all every, 2 weeks, if we're lucky. You have to keep changing versions and things like that. Dealing with it in this capacity gives you the chance to pre-filter it out so that you don't care. Right before you roll out the patch, you've tested it on an internal system. I have yet to come across an enterprise that does network security and endpoint security where they don't test something, especially with Windows patching. They patch their Windows servers. Nah, they test it on a lab system first. Okay, you can re-baseline that information, pull it in. Double check. Hey, guess what? That's safe. Go ahead and deploy it out. But in the meantime, you've already told EPO not to care about those things. So that was the EPO dashboard side. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to talk about the NSM, the Network Security Manager dashboard specifically now. And then he's going to walk you through a little bit of the workflow process that you'll use with NSM. And then he'll give you an actual demo here.
All right, can you hear me? All right, so when we start thinking about the endpoint agent, there's a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind before we get into the dashboards and kind of show you how we will present data to you. Is as we watch all of these processes and we watch these applications, even if we have a baseline, we have a unique ability now to see change. When you look at this from a data center perspective, say we have 800 SQL servers, right, in our data center, hosting the front end to our business. Don't we want to see change in that environment, even if we can't convict that it's malware? Maybe it's a targeted attack. We haven't had the opportunity to sandbox this file yet. But your analyst coming in the morning, right, and being able to instantly say, hey, 32 of my SQL.exes in my data center now have a different hash than they did yesterday. Easy to communicate with the SQL team. Did you roll out any patches, any updates, right? In a very quick ability to say, all right, we now need to take extra steps, right? We know we didn't do an update. Before I'm even able to convict it from a malware family or put it through a detection technology, we know that we have change. Now, who in here has an advanced malware technology, whether it's from McAfee or Trend or FireEye? Right? A pretty good piece. So as we watch applications and we watch services and processes, we're continually hashing those. So if you bring up my favorite car.exe, we know about it and we store it. We store it both in EPO and we store it in the network, right? If you use a technology like Advanced Threat Defense, or if you use a technology like FireEye, and you find an application that you submit, right, or a file that you submit for scanning, all right, and either one of the devices, regardless of vendor, raises its hand and says, hey, I found something bad, right? How important is it to find out very quickly, is that file anywhere else on any other system? Because we have been hashing every application and every executable, I can tell you instantly, whether it was from Advanced Threat Defense or FireEye or Trend, based on the hash, I can tell you instantly who got it first. Then I can pull network forensics and show you who has it now, and I can show you instantly everywhere you have that file or application in your environment. And in coming releases, I'm going to be able to instantly determine that it can no longer make network connections. I don't want to remediate from the network, but I do want to say, hey, you can no longer communicate across the network and effectively shut down and quarantine and isolate that individual device, but not the entire device, just the application that we found to be malicious. So if boxcar.exe happens to be bad, we can immediately say from the network, I don't care who you are, what you are, that application can no longer make network calls. The system can continue to operate as normal. Now, let me give you a use case. I pick on Mike Fay a lot. So Mike Fay is in Beijing, and he connects into a local coffee shop, brings up his laptop, and he's presented with a web page in Chinese. And it looks familiar to a web page. It's got a checkbox, and there's clearly some place to click. And this looks very similar to, hey, yes, I agree, let me on the internet, right? So we do that, we can't read what it says, we get on the internet. As soon as that laptop is presented with a piece of malware, a file, a foreign application, we have the ability to hash it. Just because he is remote doesn't mean we don't now have the ability to instantly share that information with EPO. We can share that information directly with TIE, directly through the web. By the time that laptop comes back to the United States, before that laptop ever has the chance to plug into our network, we've already known about it, we've already analyzed it, we've already convicted it, and all the systems in our environment through TIE and DXL are already immune to it. So we don't have the situation where a single laptop has the ability to affect large groups of machines within our environment, because it brought in something that we did not have the ability to see until it entered our environment. All right, so I'll take you through a few of the dashboards. When you take a look at EIA, we're giving you a couple of views. So when you look at, right, instant visibility of the applications that you have, we can change our visibility. We can also dive into these applications and get a more granular look. So when you look at our endpoint, does this have a laser on it? Yeah. There we go. So when you look at what we call our Threat Explorer, and you'll see this in the demo, this is the new front end for visibility into threats in the network security platform. We call it Threat Explorer. And you'll see a couple of things around malware, active botnets, high-risk endpoints, network forensics, and endpoint executables. So you notice up here at the top, we can sort by any malware. We can also sort by malware low, malware medium, malware of high confidence. So I have the ability to have what we call instant access to actionable data. We do all of the correlation in the back end. We're bringing in all of the extensible security connections you have. We're automatically bringing in and correlating all of the network forensics in the background. We're automatically bringing in any and all of the data that we can get out of EPO. We're automatically bringing in all the information we can get out of our risk assessment tools as well and presenting it there for you. Now, when I talk about immediate application data or actionable data, I want you to notice that we have the ability at any one point, right, to take action. So if I see gkcalc.exe and I know it's high, I have the ability to take action at that point. I can prevent that from communicating on the network instantaneously. Or I can leverage the dashboards and I can dive in a little deeper. And as we dive in a little deeper, right, we have the ability to get endpoint information. And what we see is, right, what's going on from the endpoint. We also have the ability to flip over and see what applications are actually leveraging that, right? As well as dive into many other things. So when we see our botnets and we see our top executables, it gives me a very unique ability to have very dynamic, automatically correlated workflows that are available for me. And I'll really kind of go through the power of that, right? Where you can take action and how quickly you can obtain a large amount of data and make, right, intelligent decisions. Now, how long does malware have to be in your environment before you lose critical data? Seconds, right? So, if we can fix malware, we find that it's malware. The most challenging part around malware is the remediation process. Even if we have tools in place like EPO, we have to go to the machines, we have to set up a remediation schedule, and we have to wait on those machines to execute on that schedule. And many times, although that is a necessary, right, action to remediate this system, we have already lost data. Stopping exfiltration of data with immediate termination of the network calls and the network processor, right, is absolutely critical. All right. Let me show you a quick demo. Why did the video not show? All right, can we turn the volume for the PC way up? Do we not have audio? That's a problem. Hang on, we're going to be, there we go. Let's try this again. There we go. All right, can you crank that up for me? The volume? There we go. All right. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time for a pre-recorded demo. They wouldn't let me do a live demo because they were afraid that it wouldn't work, and look at the video. All right, so here we go. This just gives you a quick view. It's about 8 minutes of what actionable data really means, what visibility really means within this platform.
gkcalk, right? We've got gkcalk.ini for a file name. We see that we have a malware confidence from the endpoint agent is very high as well. Let's take a look at URL access. Where are these applications trying to go in the net? What type of resources are they trying to access? Are they actually exfiltrating data out of your environment? And let's take a look if there's been any email activity. And when we take a look at that layer 7 visibility, bringing SMTP is significant. And we'll scroll across here and we see that we've got Outlook communicating. And SDC.pdf is probably not something that we want leaving our environment. So with a few clicks of the button, we've been able to identify and have visual confirmation of a couple of things. And let's review this. I'm going to close down the network forensics piece. And as we look at a single instance of malware, we were able to identify a high-risk user, identify that user is communicating across multiple nodes, and eventually, with just a few clicks of the button in just a few seconds, identify that we have a significant malware instance going on in our environment. Identify everybody participating in that particular piece of malware, and be able to provide what we call actionable data. All right. At any point during this process of our investigation, we have the ability to quarantine the devices, blacklist the applications, prevent them from communicating across, identify and blacklist the particular pieces of malware to prevent exfiltration of data. And we've been able to do this by bringing in automated correlation information from EPO, the Endpoint Intelligence Agent, McAfee's Vulnerability Assessment Risk Assessment Tool, MVM. Right? Bringing all of that information and bringing all of the endpoint information into the network and providing that instant view to actionable data is the real power around what we call endpoint visibility or endpoint to network visibility.
You hear me now? All right. So what do you think about the ability and the access of data? Is that something that you expected to see out of the NSP platform? Anybody here actually leveraging the NSP platform in your environments today? Yeah? Are you up to version 8 yet? You guys still on 7.5? Still 7.5? All right, get upgraded. This is what you get, right, with the actionable dashboards, the actionable workflows with 8.0. We're at 8.2 is set to release in about a week. So very excited about that. Brings in new powerful dashboards, new data correlation, the ability to actually have visibility into other parts of the network, as well as flows and endpoints. All right, very excited about that. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I'd like to open the floor to question and answer. Please be brave. Feel free to ask any question you want. We'll do our very best to answer them between Brian and I. And one last thing. Before you leave, don't forget to grab an actual white paper on EIA from Nat at the back door on your way out. Any questions? Bravery. There we go. Man in the orange shirt. It does not require. So the question is, does EIA require EPO to get information? It does not. The only requirement for EIA and EPO right now is the initial application deployment. No. The agent has the ability to communicate directly with NSP. At that point, we only need EPO for the deployment and the actual encrypted key share to set up the trust between NSP and the agent, and then EPO can theoretically be a bystander. How many NSMs? Just one NSM. Right? It doesn't change the scalability of NSM to the NSP sensors at all. Right? It's a policy configuration through EPO. So as you have your directory trees and we have a group of individuals communicating into multiple ESMs, it's simply a policy defining who communicates to what network security manager, or you can have them all communicate to a single network security manager. It's your choice based on configuration. But we support multiple managers, no problem. Okay? It's a very good question. Any other questions?
To add to that real quick, one of the things that is coming is an auto configuration so that after it's out, you'll be able to switch. For example, if you take your laptop between different offices, that it would be able to talk to the different NSMs automatically based off of a signal being sent back to it.
Yes, sir. It's unlimited right now for, I think we're, so not unlimited, I think we're looking at 10 to 12,000 per NSM. Is that correct?
25,000 is the most that we've tested.
25,000?
To a single device. At which point, that's a lot to be pushing into a single point of failure. But yes.
Okay. So one last thing that I would like to, I'll answer more questions, but I think we forgot in the beginning, is for those of you who have the network security platform, this is not an add-on technology that you have to buy. This is part of the solution today. You have the ability to leverage this with an existing network security managed license today. So this is part of the solution, a part of the technology. We're very excited about it, right? You don't need to actually invest any further if you have the network security platform or our enterprise firewall to be able to leverage the technology.
Or soon, our next generation firewall.
All right, in Q2, our next generation firewall will leverage this technology as well. Okay. Any more other questions?
Front row.
Yes. We can send it to the McAfee SIM, but we don't close down our solution. So if you use another third-party SIM product where they can automatically correlate and collect that data as well, not a problem. Pull it out of NSM or pull it directly out of EPO to be your choice. We're going to be sharing data in both paths. Okay, and that was a two-part? Okay, yes, sir. There was a question. Oh, yes.
I noticed you were agonizing over quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
Can you change the policy so that you quarantine first and do your analysis later?
We can do automated quarantining, but we have to do it through integration with our SIM technology for NSP. Now, we can do automated quarantining if we write the rules to meet those behaviors, so we can write automated correlation rules. Now, we also have the ability to write automatic blocking rules based on malware. So if I see it from the endpoint and I have the ability to correlate it to malware, I can do automated blocking, right, so that I can block first and later. If I tie it into tie-in DXL, we can hold the file, right? So once we see it, we can hold it. We can actually leverage that agent to share it with tie. Once we hold that, scan it, and hand it off. So the answer is yes. Firewall will handle it a little bit differently, and it will actually give you the ability to isolate quarantine until confirmed, right? Transparent IPS is a little bit different. Okay? Other questions? No more? All right. Well, we have 28 seconds. Going once, going twice. All right, guys, I hope that everybody has a great night tonight. I hope to see you all at the Def Leppard concert. I thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your sessions.